The stigma of the starving artist is a myth. You can make a decent living doing what you love, but the right artistic skill is not good enough to just take you there. Gordon Ramsay is not just a good chef. So success is a combination of different things, good recipes with quality ingredients, with the way that you mix those ingredients, and then there's the patience. So there's what you do it with, how do you do it, and for how long. And that's what we discuss here at the Fresh Ideas podcast. We believe that creatives who pair their craft with business skills never starve. And that's why we share recipes for success so that you can try them in your business. A few episodes ago, we did the part 1 of this series talking about fear, because fear is probably the main thing that is holding everybody back. And in the last episode, we talked about 3 ways to conquer your fear. One was changing your physical environment, because when you change your environment, your actions change by default. If you only have, milk in your refrigerator, and suddenly, a magic fairy comes and takes away all the milk and puts energy drinks, like you're going to start drinking energy drinks because that's what you have. Or maybe, in a more dramatic context, if you only have like alcohol in it and you have a drinking problem and suddenly somebody makes sure that there's never alcohol around you, then you don't drink it because it's not there. Your actions just change. So changing your physical environment, it's a good way to conquer your fear. The second one, which is social environment, you change your social environment to change the fear that you have towards something. So it's not just how things look around you, but also the people that you frequently discuss things with or that you share ideas with. They influence you. So if you join a group of high achievers, people who are positive, your behaviors are going to change. If you get in a group of people who are willing to try new things, who are passionate about sales, about drawing, about marketing, anything like that, and that's all they discuss, that starts to, by osmosis, it starts to become part of you. And the third one, which is the more tricky one, is change your mental context. So in this episode, we're going to talk about the nuance of change, because the last episode we talked about change. Now in this one, we're going to dive into an aspect that is important as well. It's not just change for change's sake. Change for change's sake. It's how you change. How you change your environment and your context is as important as the change itself. So change is a big word. I mean, it's a really small word, but it has a lot of weight to it, right? We feel like if everything changes, it's just a huge thing to digest. So maybe think about change, and every time that I say the word change, think about it as adjustment. And I'm going to do my best to use the word adjustment throughout this episode to make it easier for you. And we're going to discuss 2 kinds of adjustments. The first adjustment is a reaction adjustment. So for that, let me tell you a story. I was 7 years old, and this mom came to me with a cake, and she offered it to me. And it was the birthday party of one of my friends, of my classmates. And as I looked at that cake, I said, "Oh, no, thank you. I can't eat that." When I was 7 years old, I had severe asthma. And one of the things that I was very, very allergic to, because asthma is an allergy, was to wheat flour. And most birthday cakes are made out of wheat flour. Now, a lot of people used to tell me that I had a lot of self-control and self-discipline for a 7-year-old, because like if you offer a sugary treat to a 7-year-old, they're most likely going to say yes. I don't think it was that I have a lot of self-control. I just had some common sense, because I knew that if I ate the cake, I could die, and I didn't want to die, so I just didn't eat the cake, right? But allergies was something that was very permanent throughout my childhood. It was something that I had to go to special doctors to help me deal with it, because allergies are not necessarily 100% curable. Like you cannot cure 100% an allergy, but you can treat it. And what I learned about how you treat allergies has helped me throughout my life in many, many ways. So what's an allergy? It's essentially your body overreacting. It's like there's something that is not actually a threat, but your body freaks out. It's like, oh my gosh, we're under attack, let's go. And then because it overreacts and there's something that is not a threat, it gives a reaction to you. And sometimes a reaction that is not, that it just makes things worse. Like we probably have those kinds of friends too, that we say a certain thing and they overreact and they make matters worse because of the reaction, not because of the actual threat. So allergies, how are they treated? Well, it turns out that if you eat large quantities or a certain quantity of the thing that you're allergic to, you get worse. The reactions that you get are worse. If I'm allergic to cats and I expose myself to cats very often, my allergic reactions tend to become worse. I actually have a cat, so I know what I'm talking about. But if you eat small quantities, or you consume, or you get exposed to small quantities of the things that you're allergic to, you actually develop a certain resistance. That's why it's so advisable for kids to get exposed to different things, especially in the first years of their lives, because those little things that might be threatening are actually developing their immune system. This happens with peanuts, happens with certain allergens like, dandruff of pets. So there's this thing that if you don't do it, when you're a little kid and you develop the allergy later, you can get something that is called immunotherapy. So essentially the point of this is that exposure is good, but only if the doses is right. In immunotherapy, what they do is they give you little shots with very, very small doses that your body sees, and it reacts a little bit, but then you realize, hey, you know what? This was pretty easy to deal with. So whatever. The next time it comes, it's like, yeah, it's pretty easy. Next time it comes, the body is like, actually, this is doing nothing. Let's leave it there. So it's exposure in the right doses, in the small doses, that helps you develop that resistance to the thing that you're allergic to. Now, let's change the word allergic to the word fear, because I believe fear is very similar to an allergy. Think about it. In an allergy, something that is not actually threatening your life causes a reaction from you that could actually threaten your life. In fear, I'm not talking about fear of like there's a lion about to eat you, but like public speaking, it's something that is not actually threatening you, that would not end your life necessarily, but your reactions make it worse. So what are you allergic to? What are the things that you're afraid of? Public speaking. A lot of people are afraid of public speaking. Are you afraid of sales? Creatives tend to shy away from sales because we don't want to feel pushy. Social media marketing. Oh my gosh, creating content and posting. I don't want to be an influencer, sort of thing. Raising your prices. Why is it that we're so allergic to raising our prices? Could it be that we're just by default, or I don't know, in general, people-pleasing people and people-pleasing persons? I don't know. And we don't want to feel like we're taking advantage of people. Or saying no. Again, the people-pleaser comes out. And we're allergic to saying no because we don't want to make people feel bad about us. Now, these things, these reactions that you have, this fear, in order to change your reaction, you need to get consistent exposure in small doses. So think about public speaking. What is the smallest doses that you can get of public speaking to start to overcome that fear? What is the smallest dose of sales that you can get to overcome that fear? Maybe it's not an actual sale, with a client of yours. Maybe it's just going to a store and being the client for a little bit. Or maybe it's just putting up a lemonade stand with your son and figure that out in low stakes situation. Social media marketing, instead of thinking that you have to put the best post ever and it has to be a masterpiece, what is the smallest kind of thing that you can do? Maybe start with Instagram stories, right? Maybe start by just posting text instead of writing anything or saying anything to a camera. Raising your prices. maybe instead of raising your prices 3 times, or like 3x, like, like if you charge 1,000, just start charging 3,000. Instead of saying that, every time that you have a new conversation, you can charge 5% more or $100 more, just little by little, and see how it works. And then it would start to create that confidence in you that, hey, this is actually not that bad. People are okay with it. Saying no. What things can you say no to that are not just like huge? Saying no, sometimes it has to do with what clients demand of you. And if you are not familiar with saying no because you're a yes man or a yes woman, then maybe small things can help, like going to or refusing to go to a birthday party or something like that. Saying, no, I don't want to go, or no, I can't go. If you want to still keep the relationship. Saying no more often, just like make a no day, right? And say no to as many things as you can, as seems reasonable. So it's just how you change your reaction, things that you tend to say yes to that are not great for you. Start saying no in small stake situations. So that's the first one, changing or adjusting your reactions. Your default reaction to do something is X, and now you're going to try this other one. The second one is a mental adjustment. So fear, in a way, is mistakenly assuming that what we don't know is a threat, and then feeling like we are not prepared because we don't know what the threat actually is. You see how nebulous it is? It's like, oh, I'm so afraid of raising my prices. Why? Because, I don't know, I just feel scared of raising my prices. So you see how weird it is? Like, we are scared of something that we don't know what it is. Just let that sink in for a minute. You're afraid of something that you don't even know what it is. And because you haven't even defined it, you, of course, haven't planned how to overcome it. You cannot prepare for the unknown. So you don't feel equipped to deal with it. And this happens a lot. People want big clients with big pockets because that's the dream, right? Working with amazing people who pay well, who respect your work, who value what you do, and who are excited to work with you in amazing and fun projects. But in order to get those big clients, you need to charge more and you need to deliver certain results. And you're afraid of getting those big clients because you're afraid that if the big client shows up, you are going to mess it up because you don't feel prepared for that, because you don't have the experience yet, and you feel like your work is not good, quote, enough, end quote. So you want big clients, but you're afraid to get them because you're afraid to mess it up. So you don't show up and you don't get the big clients, and then you live forever. This is so dramatic, right? And you live forever like mad at yourself because you are not allowing yourself to get the things that you want. Instead of trying to prepare to get big clients, you run away from it. So let's flip it. Instead of running away from it, let's become curious. How do we actually get those big clients? How do we actually get the kind of business that we want to thrive and to enjoy what we do thoroughly? This has to do with something that is very, very it's not spoken of very often. I feel like it is not giving enough attention. It's probably one of the simplest ways to face fear. You see, if we fear the unknown because we're not equipped, one of the most effective ways to become courageous is just to make a plan. And the plan doesn't have to be fancy. Like if I want to have, and I was actually thinking about this a few days ago, because I have spoken with somebody on Instagram saying, hey, how much do you want to make per year? And I said, well, last year I made 150K. So like next year I would like to make like 200K. And how much did you do the year before? And I was like, oh, I did like 80K. So you almost doubled your income from one year to another. And now for that year to the next one, you just want to add like 50K. I was like, oh, that's right. I'm dreaming small. So maybe I want to do 300K. And they say, why not 500? It's like, okay, I like people who push me. But then when you think about how to make 500K $100,000 a year, it is very, very, very different what you do and how you do it and how much you need to price. If you've made it this far in the conversation, it probably means that you're liking what you're hearing. And in that case, I'm going to ask you a very, very small but very meaningful favor. Would you please share this episode and tag me on Instagram? See, I cannot hear you. I cannot see you. The only way that I can know if I'm doing something right is if I get feedback from you. And sharing these things with other people, it's a great way for me to understand that I'm doing something right. So it helps me keep going, and it also gives me the fuel to keep pushing the boundaries and doing way better things. So thank you so much for listening. And now let's go back to the show. Then what you do when you're getting less than 6 figures. And I was thinking the other day, well, I would love to do millions at some point. I know very, very few millionaires who do this, the thing that I do. I don't know any multimillionaires yet. What would it take to become one of those people? And please hear this as like, I'm not somebody who's just up for the money. Like, money is a game and it's fun, but money is the channel in order to open doors, freedom, and open the possibility of helping a lot of people. So I see it that way. The more money I have, the more I can help, and the more fun I can have. Also, it's just enticing to learn new things. So out of curiosity, instead of being afraid, right, of saying, oh, I'll get big clients and then the stakes are going to be really high and it's going to be very stressful. Things that I used to have in my head is now is like, okay, if I want to get to that goal, what would it require of me? How can I make a plan? I cannot make an exact plan of how everything's going to happen. That's not how my brain works. And I know that reality is not like that, right? Everything changes. COVID can happen again. I don't know. I hope not. Some, person who has a big influence in the world tweets something and everything changes. And I cannot plan for everything, but I can plan a few things in order to give me enough confidence to take the next step. It's not that I'm going to plan my whole life, my next 10 years to the T. It's that I'm going to have at least a general idea so that I am encouraged enough to move forward. Because if I don't make a plan, then nothing is really feasible. Think about it. If you have social anxiety, right, and you get invited to a party and you just show up without a plan, it is unnerving. Like, you don't really know what to do with yourself and you hate every minute of it. But if you know that you have this propensity of feeling awkward in the middle of a social interaction, and you know there's going to be certain things in that social interaction, certain moments, there's maybe going to be a dance, maybe there's going to be a toast, maybe there's going to be, I don't know, different kind of stages or I don't know, flows into this interaction, then you can plan for it. And you can say, okay, I'm going to arrive at this time. I'm going to try to make conversation with this person that I know. And then I'm going to sit in this place and I'm going to talk with 2 or 3 people. And then I'm going to apologize that I need to go. And that's my plan. If you have that plan, go in there. It's easier. I'm not saying that it completely goes away, the sensation of it, but it's easier because you know what you're going to do. When we took our kid for the second time to Costa Rica, we had to go through this because for kids, especially very little, like he was 3 years old, I think, or about to be 3 years old, getting on a plane and flying to a new country is like, it's crazy. There's a lot of different things that are outside of their routine that can throw them off. So we practiced in advance. This is what we're going to do when we get to the plane. And there's going to be places like this. And this is what we're going to do when we get there. And this is what we're going to do. So we had a plan. Like, not everything went according to plan, but it just relieved so much of the fear and anxiety of going through this situation. And he actually did pretty well. He was excited to see clouds from close distance. Anyway, I'm digressing now. Let's talk about how can you make a plan. What aspects can you prepare to overcome your fear of certain things? So we spoke about public speaking, right? Public speaking is one of the things that most people are afraid of, and is actually not something that can threaten your life most of the time. So one of the things that helps with public speaking is having what Donald Miller calls a driving idea. I think it's a driving idea or a leading idea, something like that, which is most of the people just start talking because they feel like there's something there and they just want to share it. But people who become effective communicators do not talk about just things that they find interesting. They think about things that they know that can help the people that are listening, because ultimately you're not speaking to vent, you're speaking to communicate something in order to help in some way somebody else, either with understanding or with influence or with new action steps for them. So an aspect of preparation that you can incorporate when you're doing public speaking is thinking about how can this help this other person just before you start talking. How can this help? How is what I'm gonna say gonna be helpful in any way? So you can even start saying like that. You say, I don't know if this might be helpful, but, and that's when you start expressing. It's like you have this doubt, but you feel like it could be helpful. So people are more willing to listen to you. And then you can rehearse your main points. If you're going to deliver a speech, instead of trying to memorize everything, like what I'm doing right now, I don't have word by word everything that I'm going to say in this podcast. Otherwise, it would be super boring. I'll sound like I'm just reading a script. And that's not the point. I'm having a conversation with you. But I do have certain points lined out, and I read them, and then, okay, I'm going to talk about this thing. And then I just kind of free flow in it as I'm having normal conversations. Because I believe a podcast is more like a conversation than a speech. And so when you're doing a speech, you want to rehearse your main points, at least start with that. Make sure that you have them not like memorized, but know them at the core of yourself, of your being, so that you know what you're talking about. You're not just dabbling because you're trying to find the right words. The second one for sales, what aspects can you prepare on sales? Well, you can research your client. You can learn more about them and see what their values are, see what their challenges are. There's a lot of information on the internet that you can read. One of the things that I do in my business to prepare for sales is that people who book a call with me or call back with me, they have to fill out a form that gives me some information about them so that I can read and I can come prepared to that sales interaction instead of just like randomly. I am comfortable now with having a random conversation with somebody that I just met and it becomes a sales conversation, but that form has helped me a lot to come prepared and to reduce my fear of having a sales conversation, and then just having a basic structure for the call. Sales conversations are just conversations, right? They don't need to have these high stakes because it's just finding opportunities to help people. It's not about trying to convince anybody. And because it's not about trying to convince anybody, you don't even have to think about your product or your service first. And the structure that works for me is I first try to find out what is their challenge, what are their expectations or past experiences. And based on that, then I can give recommendations. And the recommendation could be, hey, I don't feel like this is a good fit because of this and this and this. Because I know my product and I know it might not be the best thing to help you at this moment, or because of the fact that you said that you were struggling with this and this and this and this, my product actually helps with that, or my service actually helps with that. So let's talk about that and see if that would work for you in terms of budget and all that stuff. So that's a super basic structure. If you come prepared to a sales conversation with that, or just to any conversation, to first understand the challenges, understand the past experience, and then based on that data that they say to you, because you ask questions, based on that data, then you recommend, sales become so much better. And that's a super easy plan to implement. And how about social media marketing? One of the things that you can do is to keep a log of ideas, because one of the things that people struggle with on social media is like, what do I talk about? I don't know what to talk about. Well, are you writing ideas? Because if you think that it's just showing up with a microphone and a camera and winging it, you're deadly wrong. That's not how it works. At least not, especially not when you're just starting or trying to get the ball rolling. What you need first is to have a bank of ideas and to just become the kind of person that constantly comes up with ideas just as a habit, right? So one of the things that I do is I keep actually I probably could do this better, honestly, but I have like a Notion document in which I write down ideas as they come by. And sometimes I have a lot of notebooks around me that I just write down things as they come. So my system is not amazing because some of my ideas are all over the place. Some ideas are for content, some ideas are for sales, some ideas are for frequent asked questions in my business, some ideas are for X and Y, Z. But I do keep a log of ideas or multiple logs of ideas. And that helps me get better. When I go and create content, I already have things to latch on instead of just overthinking it. Some people write the scripts. I have done that before and it has worked really well. I don't do it as often now. I mean, I do think about what I mentioned about public speaking. Like, what is the driving idea? What am I trying to help people with? And how can this help them? When I'm thinking about what I'm going to say, but most of the time it's not super structured. But it does help me to keep a lot of ideas. Another thing, for example, right now, I am in my office, and my office is set up. My camera is in the same place. It doesn't move. My light is in the same place. It doesn't move. The microphone moves a little bit because sometimes it's in the way. But if I need to record a podcast, I hit play and I start recording. I don't have to set up for it. So if you have trouble filming yourself for social medias because you're trying to film yourself everywhere in different situations and you spend so much time just preparing for that, that is friction that adds up, and then you're like, no, this is too hard. So if you set up a place to film that is ready, then it's ready. That's part of planning to overcome your fear to do social media content or marketing. What about raising your price? Well, this is a good one. If you are going to raise your prices, which I hope you do after listening to this episode, even if it's just $50 or $100, just raise them a little bit to start with. But you can practice your response to objections. You can practice what you're going to say. What if people say this? Okay, let's actually think about it. Let's not leave the question out there flying. What if? Okay, what if? Stop. Think about what you're going to say. What could you say? What kinds of things could you say? And struggle with that a little bit before you try to engage any AI on answers, because if AI gives you the answers didn't come from you. And because the answers didn't come from you, you're more likely to forget them. So think about that. When you are struggling to find the answers to something, struggle to find the answers to something. Actually go through that struggle. It's good for you. It's good for your brain. That's how your brain cements ideas. And when you have that ideation and you feel like, okay, I haven't, you spend half an hour and you cannot think of anything else, then yes, go and find some answers somewhere else. Or, rehearse them with somebody, your spouse or a friend or a colleague. Actually, after recording this episode, I'm jumping into a role play group that I have for sales. And it's a group of friends that we just role play sales conversations with each other. So it's low stakes, but we stay in character, and that way we help each other practice. If I raise my prices, what are the objections that I'm going to get? And then I hear about that, and then I can adapt to new situations. Finally, saying no to clients who want extra rounds of revisions, or who want you to lower your prices, or who want you to increase the scope without increasing your price. How can you prepare for that? Well, two things have worked for me. One of them is sharing alternatives. So, for example, if a client wants to increase the scope, so increase the amount of things that they want to do with me that were not agreed upon before, without paying an extra fee, I can share alternatives, and I can say, well, one of the alternatives that we can do is actually, this is out of scope, so there's a fee for that. The other thing is that we can not do something that we had agreed to do and change it, right? So instead of what we had agreed to do in this thing, then bring this other thing that you believe is so important right now. In that way, we don't change the scope that much. So when you share alternatives, you are entering into a sort of partnership. So you're not just being a dictator and a hard wall between you and them, but you're collaborating. And that spirit of collaboration can take you big places. And the other one would be to write policies for your business, to set the expectation of how we engage, and to let them know, hey, this is the kind of person, the kind of business that I am. and I take the relationship seriously. Policies say this is how we do business, instead of you being the bad guy saying, no, I don't want to do it, sort of thing. So a few tips there of how you can make a plan to prepare yourself to face a situation that you fear. And I'm going to leave you with this. One of my mentors, Phil Jones, he wrote the book Exactly What to Say. And the book is about that, exactly what to say in critical conversations. He has a phrase that says the worst moment to think about what you're saying is in the moment you're saying it. Think about that. The worst moment to think about what you're saying is in the moment you're saying it. For critical conversations, you want to have a backup of certain phrases and certain things that you can say when a phrase or when a situation is activated. So objections, for example, when people say, oh, the price is too high, what do you say when that happens? Because if you're waiting to think about what to say when that situation happens, you're doomed. You want to think about what you're going to say to that in advance. And that, in a nutshell, means making a plan. So the fresh tip for the week is regain control by making a plan of how you react to critical situations and critical conversations. And then expose yourself in small doses to it so you can gradually get rid of that allergy, of that fear, and start to feel more confident in your own creative life and business. That is all for today, my friends. Thank you for listening to the Fresh Ideas podcast, where we believe that creatives who pair their craft with business skills never starve. And that's why we share recipes for success so that you can try them in your business and your life. We'll see you on the next one. Pura vida.